morning. I'm Nancy Jamison. I'm the Executive Director of San Diego Grantmakers, and I'm thrilled to be here today. Thrilled. As you probably deduced, our theme for the day, Building Philanthropy, Reaching New Heights, is grounded in this building and how it just had its groundbreaking, opened about 30 days ago. We figured that a newly opened central library had that's a testament in itself to philanthropy, and philanthropy combined with public funds that can achieve community impact. Is a great place for us to have our event. As many of you know, you helped make it happen. Your names are going to be all over here as you walk through the buildings. My name is out there too. I have a little brick that says Nancy Jamison, I love libraries. Oh yeah. Right. How many of you have stories from your past about libraries, memories of libraries, and good times in libraries, and what you learned, and librarians, and more, as we know about this library? So it's a good place to be today. So before I set the stage for the day, I want to thank some incredibly important folks that significantly contribute to our organization, San Diego Grantmakers. They help construct it on an ongoing basis. Earlier this year, we had a board retreat where we talked about what it means to wear your SDG hat. Today, I will start by asking all the SDGers that volunteer and staff that work for our organization to stand and be thanked for wearing their SDG hard hats, as I call their name. There's our board, no kidding. I'm going to ask these folks to stand, and when you checked in, you were given a little hard hat, and you asked me what the heck that was. Well, this is what it's for, okay? And stand, and we'll applaud for you all. So will the board members stand, please? And the advisory board members, former board members, all our committee members, and the annual conference committee, and the annual conference volunteers in the back. And the San Diego Grantmakers staff is probably working. Michelle, Phyllis, Justin, Jeannie, who wear their hats so much of the time. And finally, I want to welcome back an SDG alum, Megan Duffy, who we are proud to have here as a speaker in her new role as Manager of Special Initiatives at the GeoFunders in Washington, D.C. Megan, will you stand and be recognized? Those of you may remember Megan from the past. And I didn't put them up here, but oh my gosh, I have to do a huge shout out to EPIP. EPIP last night was a host for our groundbreaking reception. EPIP stands for Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, and I have never, ever gone to a San Diego Grantmakers related event where there was line dancing and Halloween decor like you've never believed. So look on our website and our Facebook to see how that party was that some of you missed last night. And maybe, ladies, you might do some line dancing later. Let's see how that goes. So you can see that SDG is a pretty fun place to work and to volunteer. There you go. Another group I need to thank are our sponsors. Today's cornerstone event for our year would not be possible without sponsors. And there are a lot of them, and we thank you deeply and from the heart. Particularly a large shout out to Sempra, who was our title sponsor. And I would like a 1, 2, 3 big thank you. 1, 2, 3. Thank you! So, this is what we did this time. We selected this building metaphor because we knew that this library about constructing and building made sense for constructing and building your philanthropy. What better place to learn about philanthropy than a brand spanking new and very cool library? And as I was musing about the theme and how to do these remarks, I thought, you know what, there's a lot of lessons in how this library was built that relate to building high-impact philanthropy. And some of these topics we'll touch on today. And I invite you just for a second to muse a bit about some of the things that are embedded in the creation of this library and how they might be embedded in your philanthropy. So first of all, creating this library was not about incremental change, but big, bold change. Big and bold. The library required patience and resilience. How many decades, how many years? I think it's 17 plus years to get it going. And there were many ups and downs and twists and turns to getting where we are today. The folks involved did not give up, and neither should philanthropy. Much listening to learn about what the community needed and wanted took place. What makes sense for a 21st century library? Community members of all ages and stages were consulted and weighed in. The instigators had a vision and took some risks, pushing the boundaries of what it's traditionally meant to be a library, what a library looks like, what a library does, and how it feels. I'm told that Darlene Shiley provided library operating support for 5 years as the city adjusts to the higher cost of supporting a building like this. Operating costs matter for all of our nonprofit partners. The library is filled with varied construction materials, glass and concrete and all kinds of things, and they varied, and the purposes served varied, and the funding sources varied. So mixtures of resources and solutions. The library's creation was dependent on teams of people, lots of collaboration for the construction workers, the funders, the librarians, and everybody else. Leadership was key. There was sustained and passionate leadership on many fronts and by many people. One of those people is a member of San Diego Grantmakers, Mel Katz, who I'm sorry is not here today. The library dome, I heard Rob Quigley, the architect, talk about, is an incomplete dome. My daughter looked at it and said, "Well, it's not finished, Mom." Well, it's on purpose. The dome is not done because neither is learning. The need for philanthropy is unlikely to end, and certainly learning about effective philanthropy should never end, which is why we're here today. Turns out that this metaphor of building work makes sense for the purpose of San Diego Grantmakers in the community as well. We provide a framework for effective philanthropy in our region. This is what we do, and this is how we do it. So maybe I'm just a touch too fond of metaphors, but I'm going to keep going. I feel like we can say that San Diego Grantmakers is here to create the pathways and the connecting sidewalks between you all. You're the philanthropic structures of San Diego. Your giving, like buildings, comes in many different sizes, forms, and shapes and purposes. And you could be separate and alone doing your giving and not have a neighbor to give you a cup of sugar, not have anybody to help with you with babysitting. But through our gatherings, our website, our newsletters, you can be supported and give support to others and be good neighbors. Like that commercial, like a good neighbor, San Diego Grantmakers is there. I had to, sorry. Through SDG, you are connected to the broad and deep philanthropic infrastructure beyond our borders. We are a bridge to national resources. There's a whole philanthropy expert field out there, and we are bridging to best practices, knowledge, and you don't have to do it alone. So we have a lot of new neighbors in San Diego Grantmakers. This year we focused more on expanding your neighborhood by adding a lot of new folks and more folks you can get a cup of sugar from. We added 16 new members. That's actually a record. And as it turns out, they're kind of a microcosm of the type of members we have, an array of the different organizational forms. And some of you members are here today. So I'd love you to raise your hand if you're new to SDG. Just put your hand up and let us know that you're here. A round of applause. Thank you for being here. Our community just got stronger with some new folks. Strong neighborhoods need all manner of different kinds of institutions to meet their needs. SDG is focusing more and more on forging relationships with other sectors, government, business, academia, nonprofit. Sources of partnership that bring valuable knowledge, connections, power, and influence to get things done, social change. We're beginning to be better known to elected officials and other influentials, and we talk about your work and your impact. We're also happy to be participating in growing relationships with major funders outside of San Diego, the Ford Foundation, Open Society Foundation, Annie E. Casey Foundation, to name a few. Both of these developments I just mentioned are largely due to the work of our SDG funder groups. And we have a history of doing funder groups well before I came here, and all of the funder groups are listed up there. Hosting funder collaboratives is really in our DNA. It's kind of like, I don't know, neighborhood coffee clutches or bunco groups, but way better. We come together around shared interest in critical community needs, and your grant making can have more impact individually and collectively. Please raise your hand if you've ever participated in any of the funding groups that are up there so we can see how many of you have taken part of this way of doing collective philanthropy. Thank you very much. A round of applause for those that come together to do collective philanthropy. One significant effort this year, which was started by members of the Education Funders Group, was the Education Synergy Project. It convened civic leaders of different sectors for 8 months to examine the need for a region-wide education improvement organization, an entity that most regions have, but ours does not. The conclusion was the group that there was a big gap and that we should start a leadership organization to support the education of San Diego County's children. That group is in formation now. Good stories from our other groups abound, and right now there's a lot of things and groups on the cusp of doing compelling new things, and some are moving to the next stage of their development after incubation at SDG. After many years and tremendous success here, the Homelessness Working Group is teaming up with United Way to further their shared goal to end homelessness in our region. The Coming Home to Stay project has had great success in reducing recidivism for the formerly incarcerated, will now be part of the ongoing work at the Jacobs Center for Neighborhood Innovation. San Diego Workforce Funders Collaborative will finish out their White House Social Innovation Funds this year under the auspices of SDG member San Diego Workforce Partnership, and will take on new challenges around developing a more coordinated, employee-centered workforce system. The Transition Age Youth Funders have recently been invigorated by a service providers convening project led by the S. Bernstein Fund at the Jewish Community Foundation. And our newest group, the Social Equity Funders, is getting off the ground and identifying shared ways to invest increased opportunity for all San Diegans. Our final example of collaborative work that has been a humongous part of SDG work this year is the Military Transition Support Project. It evolved out of the Military Family Support Working Group of funders. It's supported by 3 members with major funding from the Blue Shield of California Foundation and joined by WebMD Health Foundation and the Rancho Santa Fe Foundation. It's a community planning process designed to transform the transition from military to civilian life for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and their families. 15,000 come back every year and 8,000 stay in San Diego. We're working very closely with nonprofit coalitions, the VA, the Navy, Marines, 211, the county, elected officials, and local employers and academia in the collaborative development of this plan. And dare I say that when I took this job, I had no idea I would be having lunch with an admiral, and I did. So, for more information about our goings-on, including these groups, there's some plastic bins out there with flyers, new collateral we've just developed to talk about our work. And I should mention that there's a protocol for developing new funder groups, and please talk to me if you'd like to do it. You just need 4 of your colleagues to join you and see what it's like to come together. So, as a 21st century membership organization, we strive to be co-designed and co-built with you. We seek to share leadership planning and a sense of ownership. This is what we call member-driven programming and member-driven services. So if 3 fellow members and you want to get together and do a program for others and that you're passionate about that's relevant to Grantmakers, we can work with you to do that. And here's something the board is just beginning to analyze. Identifying ways to work with other drivers of social change. Impact investors, you'll hear a lot about that today, and creative donors and change agents that might not usually sit at the organized philanthropy table. And we look at the opportunity to join forces with them. One of our objectives this year is to gain more visibility for San Diego Grantmakers and for our members. Here are a few examples of how we've done that. We're just a little membership organization, like the little engine that could analogy that I sometimes use. And we've got a big goals and small staff. But the more people that know about who we are and what we do and who you are and what you do, the more allies and stakeholders we'll have to get things done. Finally, in a wonderful bit of, serendipity, a dear friend of mine from high school last year published a book called Dreaming Up, a Celebration of Building. It pairs the wonderful creations that children build, sandcastles, pillow forts, Legos, toothpicks, whatever they can find, with structural miracles created by the greatest architects of our time. Some quotes by these architects were flitting through earlier today, and you'll hear more about this book and what it means a little bit later. But for now, I like that quote up there. If they can dream it, they can build it. Today is designed to provide networking, learning, inspiration that will prepare you to dream big and construct well. I hope you have a delightful day, and thank you for being part of the San Diego Grantmakers neighborhood. Thank you.